Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'm going to review and page through Pathfinder, Crown of the Kobold King from Paizo Inc. Should your players be chomping at the bit to take on this update of a trio of early Pathfinder adventures? Or is this one crown you could certainly do without wearing? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. To mention in the open, today I'm going to review and page through Pathfinder, Crown of the Kobold King from Paizo Inc. It's written by Jason Bowman, Nicholas Loge, and F. Wesley Schneider. This 128-page hardcover is available right now. Carries an MSRP of $39.99, or you can grab just the PDF alone for $29.99. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Crown of the Kobold King. First things first, fine folks over at Paizo Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important you know that. I'm also going to stay picture-in-picture up here, as I always do. So that means as we take a peek through, I'll be cutting off a little bit of the upper left portion of the book. We are not going to look at each and every page, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's in this adventure and share my thoughts about it as well. It is an adventure, so as much as I want to try to stay away from major spoilers, here there be spoilers. So if you are a player hoping that your game master is going to run Crown of the Kobold King, definitely recommend tune out now. Okay, let's jump on in. We've got our credits. We've got quite a few artists here as well. I would probably butcher the vast majority of these names, but we definitely want to give credit where credit is due. Artwork throughout the book, very, very nice. Very uniform look as well. Always appreciate that. Also, a few things to mention as we jump on in here. First off, I got to be very honest. I am not very well versed with first edition Pathfinder. In fact, I think I reviewed one book from it, and I want to say it was like Occult Adventures or something like that. So I am not familiar with these original adventures. So this is all new to me. Also want to keep in mind that I have an old school mentality when I run fantasy role-playing games. So the way I would probably approach this adventure and some of the things I like and some of the things I dislike probably aren't going to line up with a lot of you out there and how you approach Pathfinder 2nd Edition adventures. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this adventure. Remember, it's a trio of adventures that, as far as I understand, really didn't have a whole lot of connection when they first came out. This is an updated edition. Of course, it's all statted for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and it's a campaign. So the trio of adventures have been consolidated and tweaked in certain ways. I understand there are some big bads that were in original adventures that are not in here, and there's a lot of new material as well. So we're going to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about this dwarven citadel, which was built to protect a third seal that was basically going to hold the whispering tyrant at bay, or imprisoned, I guess we'll say. Once again, I don't know much about first edition. I think the whispering tyrant plays a big role in Rise of the Rune Lords. I might be wrong, but also should point out this takes place about a decade prior to the current year in the Pathfinder adventures too. So this actually makes for a good place to start brand new players, brand new characters in the world of Pathfinder. This adventure is going to take them from 1st to 6th level. So we have this citadel that was built by the dwarves, and the dwarves were occupying it. And then there was a disaster and they were trapped. So the dwarves suddenly turned their back on their good gods and started worshiping an evil god. And they eventually died out. And this wizard of actually really no repute kind of sticks his nose in where it doesn't belong and accidentally shatters the 3rd seal, which is, basically imprisoning the Whispering Tyrant. Now, the Whispering Tyrant really doesn't have anything to do with this adventure. I am just mentioning this because I kind of get the impression that we might see more than just Crown of the Kobold King make a transition from 1st edition to 2nd edition Pathfinder. So this seal releases all this necrotic energy, which then starts raising the dead. So now the player characters are going to be tasked with protecting the town of Falcon's Hollow. I'll talk about Falcon's Hollow a bit in just a moment. So we've got that. We also have the tribe of kobolds who, up until this shattering of the seal, were living in the citadel. That was their home. And then they ran off, and now they're back. And they are led by the titular Kobold King, Merlocrep, first of his name. And he is a bit of a bully and a coward. I don't want to say you want to play him up as a sniveling weakling, but he rules by fear, essentially. And he had found a crown that was actually being made by the dwarves to honor this evil god. And he now has adapted it for his own crown, and the crown is kind of driving him to go back into the crucible, which is the citadel, and go further down into the depths of it to complete the crown. And Merlocrep thinks, hey, this is going to give me all this great power, and I'm going to be able to take over, more than just the abandoned citadel and the nearby town, but far more than that, which, to be honest, probably is not going to be the case, that he'll probably just get eaten up by the evil that's unleashed. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on behind the scenes of the adventure. In some ways, I would think it's a little too much going on. So the players are going to be basically using the town of Falcon's Hollow as their base of operations. And I really do like the town quite a bit because it's a lumber town, which is run by a lumber consortium, which is actually run by one of the last remaining founding families of Falcon's Hollow. And they are not nice at all. So if you are familiar in any way with mining towns around the early 20th century in the United States, this is very, very similar. The workers are paid with company script. They have their company store. And I could really see having a really good time with the NPCs in town. Now, the player characters are going to be tasked with protecting this town. And the town is kind of not exactly friendly to anybody. There are, exceptions to that. But for the most part, everybody's just toiling hard and trying to make it to the next day. They don't really have time to be, friends with everybody. Once again, there are exceptions. So the game master is going to be tasked with trying to make enough of the NPCs in Falcon's Hollow sympathetic enough that the player characters are going to want to protect the town, as opposed to just saying, well, the hell with them. Let the undead take them, the kobolds take them, everybody. It doesn't matter. Let them all die. So keep that in mind. So there are quite a few different hooks to get the players involved in going to Falcon's Hollow. And essentially, we're going to have three major chapters going on in the adventure. We have Droskar's Crucible. Droskar is that evil dwarf god that I was talking about. And the player characters are going to first encounter the kobolds there and learn of Merle Krep's plans to not only take over the area, including Falcon's Hollow, but also his plans to continue working on the crown itself to power up the crown. I like the tribe because the tribe itself, they follow Merlicrep to a certain point. And there are quite a few of the kobolds who are smart enough to know something is wrong. And as the adventure continues, the tribe gets smaller and smaller because you'll find that the kobolds are kind of abandoning their king, their leader of the tribe. We've got some cool kobold NPCs as well. I will point out a lot of combat going on in this adventure, probably a bit more combat than I prefer. I like to have a lot of non-combat solutions to problems. I'm not saying that there are none of those, but it's far more combat intensive than I prefer in one of my adventures. At some point, after the player characters venture to the Crucible, they're going to need to return to Falcon's Hollow to regroup, resupply, and that's when they're going to find out that the seal has been broken. Well, they may not find out the seal has been broken, but they'll realize that this necrotic energy has been released, and now they have to face the dead. The undead have risen. I will mention, I personally think this is the weakest portion of the adventure itself. I don't feel it really ties in all that well to the overall adventure. And yes, I know the finale has a confrontation with the mage, the wizard who accidentally, shattered the seal, who is no longer, a human. He has been corrupted by the necrotic energy, and now he's essentially the big bad. This plays out that Merlicrep's going to be your big bad, but he really doesn't. He kind of takes, I'd say, he's kind of your second string villain in this adventure. So there's going to be a point where the players are battling just waves of undead. Once again, like I said, kind of weak in my opinion. So hopefully the player characters realize that this necrotic energy is actually coming from the citadel that they were at, the Crucible, and they're going to return and they're going to go further and further down into the Crucible itself, and they're going to encounter a bunch of undead. They'll encounter some kobolds as well. And one thing about modern adventures that I'm never overly keen about is how every room has to have an encounter of some sort in it. And I do understand that, of course, modern dungeons do not have as many rooms. We don't have as much time to play out our game sessions and things like that. So I do get that. But there are some areas in this dungeon that every single room has some creature that needs to be fought. And the actual dungeon ecology of the Crucible isn't real strong. That said, there are some cool set piece encounters, though. There are some cool traps because these dwarves were known for their diabolical traps. So there are quite a few traps in the Crucible as well. So you're going to wrap up the adventure. Hopefully your player characters are going to be able to defeat the necrotic creature as well as Merlicrep. And the way I would actually approach the Kobold King and his tribe as the player characters advance further down into the Crucible. And it's not in the adventure itself, it's not mentioned, but I would personally do this where the player characters are encountering a lot of kobold corpses. So as they continue on, they're because there are all these undead that they're going to battle as well. So have it like as Myrtlacrep keeps going further and further down to the forge to keep working on this crown, that he's losing tribe members left and right. Not only they're getting killed, but also ones that are smart enough to say, you know what, enough of this guy. I'm out of here. I would also have an opportunity for the players to possibly not necessarily befriend some of the kobolds, but ally themselves with some of the kobolds. I think it would be very cool if the players confront Myrtlacrep at the climax and they've actually got their own little tribe of kobolds with them as well. Once again, it's just, me kind of just flowing with the action. And of course, I'm sure a lot of people out there will be like, nah, that's not how I want to approach it. We're going to finish up with an adventure toolbox. We get some magic items. We get some new creatures. Not a ton, but we do get a few. And that is what we have in Crown of the Kobold King for Pathfinder from Paizo Inc. So let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. I like Crown of the Kobold King. I don't think it's fantastic. I have issues with it as well from the way I run fantasy role-playing games. It's important to keep that in mind. I'm not big on combat encounter. Just not my style of play. I do think there is a ton in here that you can use. There are great NPCs. There are cool set pieces. There's some cool traps. I do like Falcon's Hollow. I think that would be a very interesting town to run and kind of have, the bad guys running it, the corporation, the consortium, and their lackeys and cronies, and also have some NPCs that are in direct opposition to the consortium. I think that would be a lot of fun to involve the player characters in. The undead portion of the adventure, I think, is very, very weak. I would probably trim a lot of it out. I would just probably use enough of it to make sure that the player characters realize where the necrotic energy is coming from and that they need to go back to the Crucible to defeat whatever's emanating all that necrotic energy and raising the dead. I could see utilizing Myrtlacrep in a lot of different ways. I personally think that it would be a lot of fun as the player characters get to the point as they return to the Crucible. And Myrtlacrep has gone further and further down into the dungeon, for one, to avoid the player characters, and two, try to reach this forge so he can continue working on this crown. I would love to have the player characters encounter a lot of like dead kobolds that have been killed by the undead that the player characters are going to end up having to fight, and possibly have the player characters picking up kobolds along the way, not necessarily befriending them, but allying with them so that when they have their final confrontation with Myrtlacrep, the player characters actually have their own little tribe of kobolds. I think that would be a blast. That's probably not the way you're going to approach it, but I think that would be pretty fun. As I mentioned, I could have a lot of fun with this adventure. It's not perfect. It's not great. It's good. There's plenty in here that's usable. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Pathfinder Crown of the Kobold King a 7 out of 10. So I do give it a recommendation. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It will not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, a whole lot more you won't find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for taking time out to watch this video. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming. Your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.